Time appears to follow a universal rhythm, but that isn't true. In the theory of relativity, Albert Einstein determined that time is relative. In other words, the rate at which time passes depends on your own personal experience. This week, the Jackalopes look at time travel.
This episode of Jackalopes Explore is brought to you by Sheridan Stationery Books and Gifts, located at 535 North Main Street in Sheridan. Stop by today to peruse books, stationery, gifts, sports cards, and more. Or visit us at SheridanStationeryBooks.com.
I'm Floyd Whiting.
I'm Floyd Whiting.
I'm Floyd Whiting.
And I'm Floyd Whiting.
And we are your Jackalopes. Now... Didn't know that one was coming. Go upstairs to get water and everything just falls apart.
You were sent on a snipe hunt.
The elusive Snipe.
Oh, speaking of which, this is Snipe.
Yes, we need to introduce Snipe, our resident jackalope. This week, we decided to go ahead and talk about time travel, something that's on a lot of people's minds due to movies, and I think it's a plot hole fix for just about anything. But time travel itself is actually quite odd once you actually break down the science of it. In a special presentation on the BBC, British physicist Brian Cox demonstrates a very simple experiment that shows you the principle of time relativity, and you can do it in your own home. So to do this, and especially with our set cameras, I'm going to try something a little different here, because there are certain things that we all have to agree upon. And my resident amateur scientist here, Steve Sisson, we know light travels at a universally set speed, correct?
Yep.
That speed is approximately 671 million miles per hour. Now, based off of that knowledge that we know light will not go any other speed than that, we can say that that is pretty much a fact. Okay. So...
I'm surprised you didn't debunk that somehow.
Oh, wait, I'll get to it.
So if a clock was made with a light bouncing between two mirrors, we can also agree that time is set with the speed of light, right? Is a consistent thing. So I want you to imagine a dot of light bouncing between two mirrors. That's not, the speed of that is not going to change. So we can say that's the set time because we're watching it demonstrated by the speed of light. Now, I was going to use my phone, but I'm going to use my finger for this instead. This finger is going to be your watch, our little time clock going back and forth. Now, from your perception and my perception, this is where things get a little different. If I take my clock and we have a set distance between the mirrors and I move it, but I move with it. So now we've got our light, instead of making just a straight up and down motion, we're making little triangular shapes with it, correct? Now, the distance between our two mirrors hasn't changed, right?
Okay.
But the movement from here to there is greater than from here to there.
Yeah, the angle is longer than the straight line would be. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
But to me, as I move through space behind the clock, it is only going up
and down.
and down. To you, the viewer, it is now making a greater length of distance. That proves that time is passing differently for me than it is for you just by moving. Just by moving myself and the clock. Thus, time is relative, meaning that it is a personal experience to each individual. And why don't we notice this? Because it's just absolutely minuscule, the amount of time that's actually changed. We can gauge this as well. A study took place at NASA. And this was pretty historical. A 1-year mission beginning in March of 2015 and ending in March of 2016. There were 2 twins, retired astronauts, Mark Kelly and Scott Kelly, identical twins. One, Scott Kelly, spent a year on the International Space Station. Now, NASA did a bunch of experiments on these 2 because what a fantastic control group, right? Instead of saying, okay, Aaron, go to space, Floyd, stay on the ground, I'm going to conduct experiments on both of you. Our DNA is different. Our lives are different. Everything that we've done is different. These were identical twins. So DNA is the exact same. So I keep one here. I throw one in the space station and start throwing experiments at both of them and seeing if, less gravity or anything else takes effect. Outside of all of those experiments that did take place, and if you're interested in that, just go to NASA's website. They have a whole page on the experiments that they did on these 2. Astronaut Scott Kelly returned home from a year-long stay in space. His slightly older twin,
Like minutes older?
I didn't actually look up the amount of time that they were separated at birth.
Right.
But Mark was the older one. He stayed here at home. But there was no real physical change that could be measured that easily, actually. Like this stuff, it happened pretty minuscule. Like they threw the flu vaccine in both of them at the exact same time just to see, do vaccines work in space? Does it change anything? Upon the return, there's one thing that they couldn't really measure that much, but they did the math. And they found out that the Mark, the older brother, is now even older than his brother Scott because Scott was moving at a consistent rate and time passed for Scott faster than it did for Mark. But how much? In a year's time, International Space Station, I can't remember how fast that thing traveled.
17,000 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
For a year.
Yeah.
5 milliseconds.
5 milliseconds.
5 milliseconds.
Over the course of the year.
Over the course of a year.
Wow.
But, so if we were to look at this at a grander scale, like Brian Cox, the physicist, did, if we sent someone into space traveling at 99.94 the speed of light for 5 years and then said, turn around and come home, that's a 10-year course, right? So they would age 10 years. On Earth, 29 years would have passed.
Really?
Yes.
In 10 years.
To you, it's 10 years because you're in the rocket.
Right.
To us, it's 29 years. So even if we could discover how to travel at the speed of light, you would not be coming back to the same place that you left.
How crazy is that?
How crazy is this? If we did discover that and we sent you up there, time would pass here so much faster that I could invent a rocket to pass you on the route. So I could have made the rocket ship that I sent you into space. You go for 5 years. I then perfect that technology to be even faster. By the time you get to the planet that I sent you, it could have been settled for 30 years.
Wow. See, time travel.
Right?
Right?
That's time travel.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Technically,
Yeah.
that is time travel.
Yeah, the person in the
time
rocket
travel is possible.
Yeah.
The issue is manipulating that to our advantage in a way that we could send you anywhere in space and time. And we can't really do that. And Einstein had this fantastic diagram that he calls the cone of light. And this thing basically kind of outlines why can't we really do that? Because we can't break that speed of light. We can't go faster than the speed of light. There's nothing that we know of that can. Now, there's the where the two particles
Yes. Yep.
Quantum entanglement.
quantum entanglement. Now,
entanglement.
quantum entanglement is something a little bit different.
That's bizarre.
And Einstein
is.
called that very scary.
Well, it was the one thing
that irritated him and frustrated
'Cause he couldn't
him
figure it
because
out.
he could not figure out how one quantum entangled particle in New York would have an immediate effect on the other one in Japan or across the solar system.
As far as you want to put it.
Faster than the speed of light.
Faster than the speed of light.
Simultaneous.
Somewhere at the quantum level is a law in the universe that allows communication faster than the speed of light.
Instantaneously.
And we don't have any idea what that is. So if we break things down to the quantum level, there's also some other very strange occurrences. So if you take a particle and you've got your little protons and neurons spinning around, every once in a while, you'll get what's called a quark. And I believe that's what it's called. Double check me. Where one of these will disappear. And then it reappears as if it hadn't disappeared. We have no idea where it goes. None at all. Where does it go? It's
Different
mass.
dimension.
It's mass.
Maybe
though.
time travel.
It can't just do that according to the laws of physics as we know them. It's not allowed to do that. So once we break everything down to the quantum level, we kind of have to take physics, time, space, throw it out the window, because there's a lot of things that we don't understand. And one of our favorite experiments is the particle, I believe it's called the particle board test. And that's where we put two slits in a board.
Yeah, the double slit experiment.
The double slit experiment. There you go.
Which is also insanely bizarre.
Absolutely strange.
Some of those are just wild.
If we were to throw particles at a board, we could watch this irregular pattern form. So let's take a board and put it between the particles and board number 1. In board number 2, they made two slits that the particles could pass through. So under observation, the particles obey physics. They pass through the slits. And so on board 1, we can see a pattern. Two slits where the particles have passed through. And then we remove the observer. Once you remove the person from the room, the particles stop obeying the laws of physics.
And they go in a wave pattern.
And they
as
pass
through.
directly through the board. Then put the person back in the room, and the particles create a pattern. Meaning there has to be an intelligence that understands it's being observed by a human being, and I have to obey the laws of physics. When you're not in the room, I don't have to. Now, some people argue that this experiment actually shows that we are living in a simulation.
In the Matrix,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah, because the computer program doesn't have to generate the outcome until the outcome matters.
Right.
That's right. How odd is that?
Yeah.
I don't have to render your surroundings until you get to them.
Right.
Experiments going on in quantum science right now, I think will yield discoveries that will change who we are and how we view reality as a whole. And I think it'll affect time. Because as soon as we figure out where these things are going, how they get there, now I need to invent equipment to get me there. I read an article years and years ago on what would you have to do? What would you have to invent a real time machine? And all of its gravity, space, pull, and you know, somebody said, oh, well, you would have to get a rod. Okay. And this rod is made out of a material denser than the sun, like 3 times denser than the sun.
Yeah.
And then you would have to get another material also denser than the sun and coil it around the rod.
Right.
And then you would have to have a vehicle of some sort. Oh, and by the way, this rod is longer than our solar system.
Right.
Like it's the big one. And then you would have to get a vehicle to ride that coil.
Yeah. And I'm
And they-
imagining the vehicle looking like a sleigh with a parasol spinning
Right.
behind it.
But at some point, they think you would be going so fast that you would break through that barrier. And what's that barrier? The speed of light. Then, who knows? Even though we have theories on how it could work, and let's say that we did build it, how do you decide when and where you're going to pop in? And then how do you get back? I mean, TVs are easy, right? You just, and you travel time.
Right.
It's super simple. But in reality, the equipment needed for this requires such density that it's just not something that can happen on that scale. But what if we figure out how the corks are doing? What if the corks are traveling through space and time somehow? And we figure out how they're doing it and build it on a small scale.
Can you imagine instant Amazon delivery?
That would be so nice.
Oh, wow.
Before we go any farther, there is a question that I do want to throw at the panel here, and that is, where would your first stop be
Ooh, I knew that was going to come up.
if you could travel anywhere in space and time?
So, I mean, people are always like, I'd go back and, take out this person that caused all these atrocities. I'd go back and, see Jesus. I'd go. I would go see how the hell they built the pyramids.
Yeah.
Because that is a huge debate. And, everything from aliens to sound technology to whatever. I would love to just see what in the heck is going on. Because I'm guessing that it's not a slave race that built these things perfectly. So that's probably my first stop.
Where would stop number 2 be?
Stop number 2.
See, everyone knows their first stop. Nobody
Yeah.
knows their second.
I honestly don't know. I don't know what
Anywhere
my
in
second...
space and time. It's crazy to think
Anywhere
about.
in space and time? Big Bang. Right before.
See?
What was there?
That's my first stop.
Okay.
That would be my very first stop. How did it begin?
Right.
Stop number 2. How does it end?
Ooh.
I would travel to the point and watch the last star die.
There's a restaurant there at the end of the universe.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. Douglas hasn't lied to me yet.
Right.
Steve, what about you? Where would you go? Stop number 1.
I think the Titanic, watch the sinking of that,
You're
and
making-
answer the questions.
Oh.
And stop 2, I'd go to 1996 or 7 and put money in on Google.
No, there you go.
I'd invest in
There you go.
Smart.
Emmy.
I think it's none of my business, so I'm not traveling anywhere. That is my answer.
Seriously?
Yes.
If you had the ability, you
If
would
I had
not
the
take it.
ability, I think it's none of my business.
Oh, the temptation would be so high, though, wouldn't it?
No.
Really?
Not for me, but I understand why it would be.
Even to go back to your high school years and just
Ew.
change well, I mean, and change stuff there, and fix some of the things that were not so great.
Well, maybe that would be nice to tell myself to actually apply myself in high school, because I was very much a rebellious child who was like, grades don't matter. And I'm too cool for school, and I do regret that. But at the same time, that's good to regret that, because now I'm in college, and I'm using that regret to fuel me through this.
There
Yeah.
you go.
This is all life experience, and this is how it's played out. And I
So-
think that's the mystery of the world is wonderful.
So you're the philosophy of whatever happened shaped you today, and you don't
Yes.
want to change that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You touched on a lot of people would say, I'm going to go back and get rid of Hitler, right? I'm
Right.
going to prevent World War II. Okay, so we're going to take that theory. I'm going to go back and I am going to change everything that was wrong. So let's say you do that. What now happened that would cause you to go back in time in the future? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing bad.
Right.
So you've created what's called a paradox. Now, I honestly believe that time, being the way that it is, and our lack of understanding what it is, could actually be repairing itself all the time, everywhere, and we would never know.
Right.
We would never know. You've got these people who have these theories about the butterfly effect.
Right.
I swear the Berenstein Bears were spelled this way.
Oh my gosh. I will die on that hill.
Right?
I will die on that hill.
But you've got to ask yourself, what would cause something like that? If the universe that we know of had to repair itself somehow, but something was left behind like an echo, that would be the butterfly effect. In my opinion, the butterfly effect is something completely different, and that is you go back in time, step on a butterfly, and changes everything.
That's different than what you're talking
Right,
about.
right.
That's the
Mandela effect.
Mandela.
There you go.
effect,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Because
There we
I
go.
was like, but yes, I will die on that.
So there we go.
The bears.
I was wrong. The Mandela effect is the
Yes.
one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
but see,
And there are people that swear up and down that is evidence of time travel,
right?
because we all Berenstein Bears, right? And we've kind of covered this. Jiffy peanut butter doesn't exist. All of those things, but we have fond memories of a lot of this stuff. Why? Because somebody went back and screwed with something, perhaps.
And the universe had to correct itself because you cannot exist in a paradox.
And when you're wiping out all that evidence, it's not 100%
And those
accurate.
darn Berenstein Bears.
Yeah. A couple letters got switched around in some people's minds, and they're like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
Or an event so large took place that we're seeing the best the universe could do
Right.
as far as a repair job.
Yeah.
We don't know. And what I'm saying is I don't think it's evidence of a simulation. I think it's evidence of maybe not even time travel, maybe not intentional time travel,
Right.
but something universally happening with the flow of time has to go back and correct itself. And that it happens so frequently, we just notice these small things, right? Like a lot of people think, what do they call it? Deja vu.
Oh,
Okay?
sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
Deja vu.
Yeah.
Now, they figure the real health theory of deja vu is your the neurons in your brain work so well that it's actually recounting information as it's being stored. So even before the memory is created, it is throwing it back into the processor of your brain as a memory. That is deja vu.
Do you guys have theories of deja vu, like your own theories?
That is my theory.
Okay.
That,
Yeah.
you
about you?
remember it because it's happening right now.
Yes.
Mine, I like to call it deja vu.
Really? Because I call it Ujade.
Nice. It sounds like French dip.
It's like Dave in his
Yum.
own juices, I guess. Mine is, it's so bizarre because when I have it, and it's not often, but when I do, I'll try and do something just kind of really out of the ordinary.
Break
just
the
to
cycle.
break the cycle. But then sometimes that's part of the cycle and then it just creeps me out even further.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, if that's the simulation theory, like, oh, I've been here before. Or I really don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but it creeps me out bad.
Yeah.
Because I've had instances where it's like, wow, I've seen that before, and then it's over. But then there's other instances where, it goes on for a minute or
Yeah.
longer, and that really freaks me out. And I don't know why. I don't have an explanation.
Right.
What's yours?
Mine is, so I believe the more scientific thing, but I always had my own theory growing up, and it's kind of dark, but it was that whenever I experienced deja vu, I was like, on the timeline I was on, I died. And then I was just going to a different timeline.
Almost like a game.
Yes.
Okay, you're saved.
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
here's your save
So
point.
you're respawning.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
the okay? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
interesting.
kind of what I always thought it
It's
was.
actually a really interesting theory.
Yeah.
That like something happened, but it didn't happen this time.
Yeah.
But that moment just before the bad thing happened is still in the save file.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
then it
interesting.
just, yeah.
And it's
you
all
just
okay because
go-
you had another guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Exactly.
wonder how many I get.
That's
Maybe I'll be like a cat.
left, right, VA select start.
You got to get 10,000 points before you get the next one.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really interesting to look at that stuff. But when it comes to deja vu, I really do believe it is the neuron processing information so quickly. Because I would fall back on the idea of my brain is imperfect, and our brains can do some amazing things that we don't understand. And yeah, I totally buy I'm recalling information even as it's being stored.
But you
I
get
can see
that weird feeling, right?
Well, it makes you
get that
uncomfortable.
Yeah,
really
it does.
weird- but it's almost not an out-of-body experience, an OBE, but you get that really weird, like,
Sensation.
I'm here, but I'm not.
It's conflicting senses because your memory is coinciding with what's happening right now, and that doesn't normally gel. Normally, the memory is something that happened a while ago, not what's happening right now.
Yeah, sometimes you even have a pretty tough time recalling that one. Sometimes that's a good thing, other times it's not. But so that's basically my rant about time. I love the idea of time travel, but we really can't get to a point in a society like, I've seen episodes of TV where they were like, oh, well, we can just travel time whenever we want, and as long as you don't touch everything, it's fine. If you offered that to anyone, that's a godlike power.
Oh, yeah.
That's a godlike power. I can go anywhere at any point in time. Wow, you could affect everything. But then again, you're creating paradoxes.
And we wouldn't even know.
No, you
On
wouldn't.
our timeline, we wouldn't even know
You'd
that
have
they messed
no
with
idea.
something.
What
Yeah.
if Bezos figured out how to travel time? And he's like, all right, now I'm going to go back. And I'm going to start selling books out of my garage.
Right. That's going to be the cover.
And that's how I'm going to start this whole thing. You know what I mean? And there's been lots of media that go into this stuff with all kinds of theories. The alternate timeline. Oh, you caused this. Biff is now president. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I really don't think time would do that. I think that the universe corrects itself because there is a set portion of the universe that operates on these laws that have to be obeyed.
Mm-hmm.
And that we actually do not have the ability, even if we had a time machine, we do not have the ability to change those laws.
So this kind of interesting thing about that is like you want to go back and try to kill Hitler, but something's going to stop you from doing it. You're going to get into a car accident on the way to shoot him or something, and you're going to, slip on a banana peel or something that's
Yeah.
always going to stop you.
The universe
It's
will,
always the banana peel.
Yeah.
the universe will correct itself.
Yeah.
Because it has to obey its own laws.
And that prevents the paradox. No matter
All
how
the
hard you
time.
try, you cannot accomplish that.
You won't be able to get it done.
Yeah.
That's why bananas were made.
Right.
Well, and my problem with time travel is if you invent the machine, technically, like in my pea brain, my scientific understanding, from that period, you could go forward because now it's invented. But how could you go back? Because it doesn't exist in the past. So really, I would think that time travel is just moving forward because if you could go back, you could never get back because the thing that took you there doesn't exist.
And the laws of relativity follow exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I can jump in an object, even now, my car. Hell, walking down the street.
You're traveling.
I'm a
through
time traveler.
Right.
So we can do that. We do not have the ability to break through the other side of Einstein's cone and get to the past.
Right.
So what they wouldn't, physicists sit and really talk about this. What they propose is we take that cone and fold it.
Right. The bend.
Fold it back in on itself. And then we can figure out how to get to the past.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Now, there has been attempts throughout history. There's been stories. There's been theories. There's been conspiracy theories. And one of the biggest ones is attached to an absolutely brilliant scientist who has nothing but shadow and mystery around his life. Tell me what you found. Eric.
Okay. So, of course, Nikola Tesla, right? It totally deserves a show of his own
Oh, yeah.
for
At
us.
least one, yeah.
At least one. But of course, everybody knows the Tesla coils and, free power. And he predicted actually back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that data would be transferred without wires. I mean, Wi-Fi, essentially, that came to be in, what, 1990-ish?
Yeah.
So a lot of predictions, smart guy, a lot of work in electricity and magnetic fields. And he was obsessed with time travel. And he was convinced that he could, and maybe did, build a time machine using electricity and magnetic fields. He was actually quoted as saying, this was back in around 1895, he said, "I could see the past, the present, and the future all at the same time, whilst in one of his machines."
What was he on?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What's interesting about this, though, is Einstein's theory of relativity opened the door to time travel in 1905. That's when he basically published that. However, Tesla in 1895, so 10 years prior, said that he had discovered and suggested that time-space could be affected by magnetic fields in that they could, if strong enough, disrupt the continuation of the space-time threads. So this gets really weird. Just go with me on this journey because this is the weirdest time travel story I have ever come across in my life. And I happened upon it in this research. So whatever you want to say about who these people are, I get it. I don't care. This is about Tesla, time travel, and what I kind of think is proof of this. There was a book published in 1893 entitled Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. Now, I will already dispel the rumors. Yes, Trump's kid's name's Baron. This wasn't that. He was a baron. And the last name was actually Trump, but it was English, took over and changed it, actually. Anyway, the story goes that there's an aristocratic youth who becomes bored with his luxurious lifestyle and goes in search of adventure. So he travels to Russia and discovers an underground world. And in that world, he is allowed to travel to different periods in time. The illustrations of this book, and you can look all of this up. It's all out there, and it's all been snooped or whatever that site is. The kid in the book looks like the kid now. I mean, it's almost uncanny, the resemblance. So in this book, his mentor, father figure, is named Don Fume. Okay, weird. However, again, I'll dispel this. Don is actually Spanish for Mr. But just, again, similarities. And as you know, if you watch a show, the thing I like about conspiracy theories is the stories. Because these are fantastic. So we've got Baron Trump, you got Don. This book goes on and on about this fantastic journey that this kid goes on. 4 years later, okay, Ingersoll published a sequel to this book called The Last President. This is 124 years ago, in which a very wealthy man who lives on Fifth Avenue in New York decides to run for president. The wealthy guy wins. The location that was illustrated in the book is actually where Trump Tower sits right now. And as this guy wins the election, he begins to select his cabinet, of which the first person he selects is a mysterious man named Mr. Pence. Here's where it gets weird. Like it wasn't weird already.
I'm invested now.
But wait, there's more.
Don't answer yet. This is where this made it so much weirder for me because I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, whatever. There's some coincidences. I don't believe in coincidence, but there's a lot of coincidences. The tie back in with Tesla and time travel is that upon Tesla's death, most of his research had been taken by the government. FBI, CIA came in.
Still not released.
A lot of it was released in 90 something. Sorry, I don't have the date. 240 pages through the Freedom of Information Act were released. But it was like the redacted UFO kind of stuff, you know. What's really bizarre about this, though, is there was an electrical engineer with the National Defense Research Committee, who was given most of these files and asked to do research on it and see if any of this was actually viable or not. That man's name was John Trump, Donald Trump's uncle. So I'm sitting here going, okay, wait a minute. You've got a dude, Tesla, who claims to have invented the time machine. You've got a book from around the time that Tesla was claiming all of these things that predicts several things in the future that are then, when he dies, given to a guy who ties into the coincidental names and natures of this entire story. I'm like, if that doesn't sound like evidence of time travel, I mean, there's too many, one thing, maybe it's a coincidence. Two, maybe it's something. All of that together, Mr. Pence, the whole thing. And again, I don't care what you think about these people. This story is insane.
It's wild.
And when I was like, this cannot even be close to real, I started researching all the way down, and all of it is 100% there. Now, Don, Mr., those things, there's taking a little liberty with it, but just the fact that it's in there.
What was the story again? What was it called?
It was Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey.
I'm going to read it.
Published in
I need to know.
1895.
But it's kind of like The Simpsons predicting stuff.
So that is exactly what I was thinking when I was doing this research. I'm like, so I went back and I pulled like the Simpsons stuff, right? And it's like all of the predictions
It's wild.
that they made. And it is absolutely insane. And then what really scared me is that the Simpsons did an episode, and I forgot about this one, predicting zombies in 2024. So there you go.
That's a future episode, but not too far in the future.
Right. So
Get rid of the
sketchy.
bath salts. Get rid of the bath salts.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But it just, this story blew my mind because I'm like, oh, this has got to be BS. I mean, it just has to be. All of it plays out. So yeah, I would highly suggest. I haven't read the books yet, but I'm going to because
I'm
I'm
just
like,
curious.
this is just bizarre.
I would do it out of sheer
And then
curiosity.
just the tie-in back with Tesla, and that the uncle gets a hold of all of it and is asked to research it and see if any of it's viable, seems really bizarre.
Speaking of Futurama and Matt Groening and The Simpsons, a lot of people are like, those who cruise around on the internet know that, there's been some episodes. They're not predictions. They were just episodes.
Right.
That turned out to be fairly accurate.
Almost 100% accurate.
And the reason why I say Futurama is look at the main character of Futurama. What happens to him?
He travels back or forward in time.
He travels forward in time. But now before they came out with this new series, the new season, what was the ending to Futurama?
They get to go back around again.
He's got to go back around because he accidentally breaks a time machine and freezes all of time. And because of this, he's granted another life. Basically, go back through. He's not going to remember anything. It was a great way to actually end the series because you can just start the whole series all over again.
You go back to episode 1.
I'm just doing the same thing, baby. We're just in Fry's time loop. But so think about that. Like, what if we are on some sort of circular rotation without knowing it, right? And whatever life, people call it a soul, call it a spark, whatever the hell is fueling your intelligence inside of you, has a way to hang on to memory, a way to hang on to what we'd already done,
Well, and maybe that's the deja vu.
Right.
That's where that comes back.
And this makes me think of something that used to happen to me when I was a kid. Like, we'd have cable at that point, so you didn't control, like streaming now, you didn't control what you watched. And you'd be thinking about a certain episode of a show, and you were like, oh man, I hope that's on. And then it would
come on. That happened to me too. Yeah.
I'm like, I can predict the future.
I'm manifesting. Yeah.
But it's an interesting thought, and here's the best part of it. We have no idea.
Right.
We have no idea. The idea of the Matrix itself is it was the 90s. the height of human civilization. There was no Matrix involving the Old West. There was no Matrix involving the 2000s. The machine just kept processing the 90s over and over and over. Can you sit here and tell me that that's not what's going on?
Yeah. Well, it seems like, decades prior to the 90s are very distinct. But then after the 90s, it all kind of blends together.
It's all mishmash.
Yeah.
I thought that same thing. And then I started looking back at the fashion of the 90s.
Oh, it's definitely changed.
And then I looked at the 2000s. Oh, puka shell. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Whatever, you wore those.
I frosted my tips.
My theory on that is we're not quite removed far enough from it yet. Like the early 2000s music videos and stuff had a certain look to them.
Yes,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
The movies,
Yeah.
Soap operas.
Yeah. And so I think once we get a little further away from it, it will have its own look and feel.
As the high def keeps getting higher.
Yeah. Right. And that's another thing. Like all the media from the 60s and 70s has a certain look because of the way film and video worked. And once we get into high definition stuff, it's going to be less distinct from one generation to the next. It's all going to be looking still pretty crisp.
Absolutely. And it's just, I don't know. It's one of those situations where I wish I could peek beyond the veil. Mm-hmm. I wish I could pay attention to the man behind.
I'm good. It's none of our business.
So that is an interesting theory. Maybe what's his name? John Trump, who's the guy who had to study it.
The uncle.
Yep, John.
Okay, so
Uncle John.
let's say Uncle John gets all this paperwork, and he gets paperwork that wasn't released to the public, which
I think he got the stuff that other people didn't see.
Yeah, I guarantee you there's paperwork that they didn't release. So let's say he takes this, and in his little lab, he goes ahead and he follows through with some of these experiments, and all of a sudden you're face to face with Nikola Tesla, even if it's just through like a portal or a mirror or something. What would you do with that?
Gosh.
Would you say, "Oh, the American public's got to know about this"? No.
Absolutely not.
There's no
they
way.
They can't be trusted. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Not
can't
just
be
that,
trusted.
but-
You can't be trusted.
Not
None
at
of
all.
us.
I would abuse that power to the end.
Oh, man,
That
absolutely.
is one thing I am not ashamed to say. There's a reason why I don't run for governor.
Well, he's part of the National Defense Research Committee. What are you going to do with that information? Weaponize it.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
But how are you going to weaponize that?
Depends what it is.
yeah.
You can peek into the past.
Well,
Okay.
then you can peek into what's their game plan for this battle. What's,
But could you? Nikolai was looking into the future. It sounds like John was looking into the past. All you could really do is say, was Napoleon as short as everyone?
Right, exactly. Do you really walk around with his hand in his
Looks like
or
he
his
was fine.
appendicitis? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like the water slides as much as that one movie said?
But you see, like, how could you release that? It's just like when we talk about aliens and where are we with technology, and then listening to what CEOs have said about Lockheed Martin and Skunk Works, and where one stood up and said, I could get ET home. Holy crap. Okay, well, what if that's a true statement? What if those government contracts, when the UFO fell out of the sky in Roswell, they took those government contracts and went even farther? What if you had the ability to travel through space, establish colonies? Would you bother coming back? Let's say that you established a colony big enough on a other planet and in another solar system. You've got not just one, but a fleet of UFOs, a fleet of ships that you made, your company made. There's no government out there. Now I've established a colony on another planet. Now I don't fall under the government. And I control, because I fund all their campaigns, the government that's back on Earth. Do I want to dredge 7 billion people across the universe? No.
No.
Because on this other colony, I am God here.
Yeah, right.
I own these skies. The CEO of this company owns these skies. Now fast forward 4 generations. I'm not going back. I'm not even telling you I'm there. I am the future of humanity. The rest of you choke and die.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now,
Well, intense.
but see, here's the deal. My point is this. You think something has control. You think that we're all going to progress together. But we won't. We won't. If they have that information, you'll never know.
Oh, 100%. They're not going to say, we know how to travel into the future, whether that's breaking that speed of light, the quark, whatever it is. If Nikola Tesla built a time machine and they have that, no, we're never going to know about that.
Right. Yeah.
Just because, why would they release that to anybody but themselves? They're using that for their own purposes.
And the minute the public knows, all of your enemies know. Mm-hmm. And now all of your enemies know that you have this technology. And that becomes the priority for me, getting it from you. That is it. That is my end goal. Because I know you've got the technology of the future or the past. And now every penny I've got is going to go into a program to get that away from you. So you're going to guard it, and rightfully so.
Right.
But my point beforehand is that can also be abused to the utmost destruction of who we are as a people.
Absolutely.
We're the United States because we're on this land. The minute you get off of it, God, man, it's every man for himself sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you go to another planet, that's not U.S. territory. I don't have to abide by your rules or your morals or your values. That could be a corporate god out there. And as far as we know, they are. And why bother telling the rest of the world? Steve, we go back and forth on time travel. We go back and forth on the scientific possibility. I'm trying to get us back on because I derailed this entire thing. But what do you think, as someone who really does work with magnets and technology and is pretty logical and pragmatic in the way that you get things done?
I think you hit on it pretty succinctly earlier, where we're all traveling through time all the time at the rate of 1 second per second. Some of us are traveling at different rates, people in the ISS. So we know with absolute certainty that we can alter the rate at which we're traveling forward through time. But as far as going backward through time, it all starts with, well, you take something 3 times the mass of the sun and wait a second, that's the first step? What do you do after that? And then you accelerate someone to 99.4% the speed of light. That's the first step. You can't get past that first step. And even if you do, in theory, there's always some other hurdle in there somewhere that's like, we can't get past that. So I think we can alter the rate at which we're traveling forward through time, but as far as going backward, at least in this universe, if you're talking about multiple universes, maybe there's a way to jump around there.
Different laws and different universes. Yeah.
But is time travel possible in this universe? No, I don't think it is. And I think the biggest evidence for that is we've never met anybody from the future, because
Or have we?
Oh, stop it.
Amy's going to cover that one here in a second.
I think it would be really easy for someone at some point in the future of humanity, because we're talking about the entire history from beginning to end of humanity. As soon as time travel becomes possible, it's always been possible.
Yeah.
Right. So you can go back to whatever time you want to go back to. So it would be really easy for someone at some point in our future to travel back 200, 300 years or whatever, book themselves on a commercial airline flight, and then create some sort of medical emergency like a heart attack or something as that plane is traveling out to the runway to take off, causing it to turn around and go back to the gate and not crash into the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And something like that, you wouldn't have, it doesn't lift the veil. It doesn't show any foreknowledge. You just had a heart attack or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that just happened to happen. And I think, something like that, it's not going to really drastically alter the course of history. If one plane crashes instead of 2 at the towers, I think humanity still kind of continues on that same path, but you save 1,000 or 2,000 lives by doing it. So at some point, someone in the future would probably try to do that.
Yeah.
And the fact that things like that haven't happened, of course we wouldn't know about it.
See, I was going to say,
that's
how
the
do we know
problem.
something like that hasn't happened?
But the fact that 2 planes crashed at the World Trade Center means that didn't
At
happen.
least that instance didn't happen.
And I think there are a lot of other things like the JFK assassination and like Pearl Harbor where you can say some good came out of that, and maybe it's not worth going back and trying to, because who knows what's going to happen if you change that. I think something like that where you're just kind of altering how it happened, you're saving 1,000 or so lives. Who knows what those lives would have ended up doing in the future. It probably would not drastically have changed things. What good has come out of 9/11 as far as how the world has changed? It's kind of hard to say that any of those changes have been for the better.
Yeah.
So, and maybe, you're talking 10,000 years from now, maybe that's not that big of a deal, depending on what happens,
From now to then, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's just no big deal in the history books of,
I would rather go back and prevent World War III and IV.
Yeah,
right?
maybe that's a
Right,
much
right.
bigger deal. So, that's not real strong evidence. But the fact that we don't have any, and why would you have to hide the fact that you're a time traveler? I mean, why couldn't we know that?
Yeah.
That somebody went back and changed things? Because it's always like, well, if they did, it's because we don't know they did it. But why not say, hey, somebody came back and prevented this person from getting killed or whatever? The fact that there's no evidence of that, to me, kind of means like it's never going to happen.
And again, there have been stories that have always passed, so-and-so prophets and people who can see the future. Nostradamus, yeah.
Yeah, but they're always like, after the fact, you can go back and figure it out. It's not much use then. Figure it out before it happens.
And it's a good point, because why wouldn't you, if you honestly did come from the future, why wouldn't you sit down with everyone and say, look, there's absolutely no way I can prove this other than the fact that I'm not on any of your records, but some things are going to happen. Okay, well, before I go back in time, I'm going to figure out what happens within the next week. And I'm going to sit in a little room with absolutely no contact from anybody and a government official. And I'm going to say, on Tuesday, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what, though? This year, that would have been impossible. we had lifetime events every day.
Well, see, but
That's the future. If you're from the future,
If you're
you
from
know
the
that.
future, you know those lifetime events. And so you could be like, okay, this happens. And then finally, maybe someone would be like, all right, one of two things. This guy came from the future, or he has got the best intelligence information on the face of this planet. And
Either way,
you
want this
There's
guy on your side.
it's a big benefit.
Third option.
Crazy.
A very good psychic.
Well, yes. But we haven't seen any of those yet
That's
either.
a third option.
Not
though.
one.
Well, there has not been a single psychic win the lottery yet.
And
Man, I wish.
well, and I love how they tell you that stuff. They're like, well, it's because I don't want to abuse my powers. Get out of here.
Somebody at some point would.
I would
I-
use that power.
If I was psychic, I wouldn't be here. I'd be up on the hill with a great big house. Yeah, you're damn right. But the thing of it is, there has been somebody who has claimed that they come from the future.
I don't even want to talk
Now,
about it.
Aaron really wanted Emmy to watch this documentary.
How far did you make it?
22 minutes. And then I started fast forwarding to try to get some highlights.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even make it through fast forwarding. I was like, I'm done here.
So the documentary that you watched was,
The Man from 3036.
and you feel that it was not even
Fake.
Yeah.
Absolutely fake. And, I was like, oh, maybe this documentarian or documenter, I don't know how to say it. Documentarian?
We'll go
That,
with that.
that
Okay.
works for me.
I use that term loosely in any sense, because at first I was like, oh, maybe this guy's going to talk to this guy and be like, okay, you're full of crap. But the worst part is he was in on the fakeness of it all. So, first note on this man, who apparently is from the future, is one of the most arrogant men I have ever seen in my life. And
And she knows me. That's really saying something.
And if I could have, just reached through my screen and slapped that man, I would have. I just cannot stand the way he speaks. Nothing. Anyway, so there's this man that was caught stealing food, and he claimed to be from the future, and he's got no documents, which that can easily be just, okay, you burnt your documents and you're not in CODIS.
What year did he get caught stealing food? About when does this take place?
Do you remember, Aaron? Because
It was recent, wasn't it?
This was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, somewhere
Oh my
around
God.
there.
Yeah.
That recent?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought this was like 1980s, 1990s.
Oh,
Oh,
kind of
no.
thing.
No.
No, this was like the other day.
He talks about the COVID vaccine. No.
Okay.
It's recent, unfortunately. Anyway.
If only it were in the past, it would be so much better.
Like, if this dude was like in 1980 and going like, there's going to be COVID, I'd be like, oh my gosh, okay.
This guy's brilliant.
Yes, but no. He's QAnon kind of conspiracy theorist. So he gets caught stealing food and says he's from the future. He's got no documents, which again, how easy is it to burn your documents? And if your DNA is not in CODIS, not in any of these databases, okay, then you're not a person. Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like proof to me, I guess. But this documenter guy goes like, I am going to get an interview with him. And they have this horribly staged phone call. Which we'll get to the phone call. Because how do you make a phone call if cell phones are... Okay, anyway, we'll get to it. Anyway, so they get on this phone call. He's like, I want to interview you. And he's like, well, I don't want to be interviewed. And so he's like, well, it really helped me out. Okay. The resistance
You've convinced
was
me.
not very much. So
It's like Will Ferrell in Austin Powers. You can't ask him 3 times.
yes,
You just can't handle it.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh, that was a good scene. But then, the first thing this guy says, to this man from the future is like, well, tell me about the future. Oh, you don't want to know. Okay, why are we here then?
Yeah.
Why are we here? Why'd you agree to this? Stop it. Just tell your story and get out. I can't. And
What is his story?
so he has a lot of stories. But
Well, he's from the future.
First
So he's
off,
got to have a lot of stories.
the photo, the arrest photo, which I don't know if it's real. I don't know. It looks horribly photoshopped to me. And also it looks like it was meant to be in like the 50s for some reason, the photo.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, if we can attach a photo, that'd be great because it's wild. But yeah, the photo itself, the
It looks
arrest
like
photo.
like some sort of like gangster.
Yes.
Like something like his name should be Bugsy or something. You know?
Yes.
Really? Like
kind
a-
of bring that up in your mind, and if we can put
A
it in post,
Bugsy
like-
looking guy? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just looks like like
Well,
a
and he's
mafia.
bald. He's got no eyebrows.
He's got no hair.
And I don't know, his head's large, like abnormally large from what I could tell. And again, the photo quality looked like it was from the 50s and it was black and white for some reason.
It's weird.
I don't know.
I don't think the police have taken a
No.
black and white mug shot
Especially,
since color
it
came
was
out.
like a model photo too, like the smolder,
And doesn't he
the
complain
blue
about...
steel.
He complains about like the radiation or something,
Yeah.
doesn't he?
Yes.
But he's
So-
not afraid of using cell phones and all that kind of stuff.
But he is afraid
He
of cell
is.
phones.
Okay.
And that's why I'm like, how do we get this phone call?
Yeah.
I'm
That's what
confused. Okay, so first thing the guy said, well, the whole, you don't want to know. But then he goes like, well, last photo I saw you were bald. And he was like, well, you can't grow hair in the future. And again, it's always this
I
like,
like your impression of him.
yes.
Actually.
Well, and that's what he sounds like. And it's so like dramatic and just, you can't grow hair in the future. And he's like, oh, why is that? Like a normal person talking to a person. Radiation. And it's like, okay. So now we get into how cell phones were banned in the 2060s. Because, mind you, this man also asks the other guy to turn off his cell phone. Mm-hmm. And so cell phones are banned in the 2060s because the 5G is causing radiation.
Oh,
and see,
yeah.
now hang on.
5G.
Yeah, 5G. So
Yes.
by the 2060s, we've only hit 5G.
Yes.
First off, get off your ass.
Yeah.
If we're not past 5G
Yeah.
by
It's as
2060,
fast as it goes. Sorry.
just
Yeah.
put the damn phone down.
Yes.
Especially since that number is just like the iPhone numbers. You can make it whatever you
You
want.
could exactly.
It
That's
doesn't
just
have to be
insane.
5. It could be 25.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we're here where it's like, okay, how did we make this phone call then? Like, did you go to a payphone? And even then, why would you go to a payphone? Because a payphone's got to have radiation.
Well, everything's got radiation.
Everything's got radiation. What? Like, how do we make this phone call?
It's like a little nuclear power plant in your
Yes.
pocket.
A lot of, there's been all kinds of different studies coming about cell phone radiation. But do I think it's going to end the entire world? No. No, I really
well,
don't.
just wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This man seems to think that,
I've spent a lot of time at broadcast tower sites where there's a lot of radiation.
Yeah.
You've spent time near stuff that could kill you.
yes.
That really can
Yeah.
kill you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm not afraid of my cell phone at all.
Yeah.
That is nothing compared to what else is out there.
I like my social media too much, and if I go that way, I go that way. That's how I think of it.
And you'll be typing about the Bernstein Bears.
Yes.
And then fade off. It was the 5G. It was the 5G.
So we're seeing a theme already with the
It's tying into
conspiracy
the-
theories about 5G.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes on to call this era the idiot era, quote unquote.
Can't argue with him
that's-
there.
That's what
Yeah.
they call it in the future.
That's probably true.
It made me
Yeah,
think
kind of.
That might be accurate.
It made me think of that movie Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Yes, instantly.
Brilliant
anyway.
work.
He also says by the 2080s, the average lifespan for a male is 40 years, and the average lifespan for a woman is 50 years. Documenter goes, why is that? Radiation. Okay.
Lots of radiation.
There's a lot of radiation out there.
So then they get a second interview. The second interview. This is where I was like, okay, this documentor is in on it.
Yeah.
Because he has this whole little scene where he goes in the bathroom and he's like, oh, could I use your bathroom? The guy's like, sure. So he goes in the bathroom and he takes the comb out of the drawer and taps it on the counter, like all sneaky. He's taking hairs. He's going to do some DNA testing. Okay. So they had that whole dramatic scene. And then he goes in for the second interview. And this is where we start talking about how he has a microchip. And that is from the quote-unquote vaccine war that is happening right now, he says.
This is the start of it.
Yes.
The COVID vaccine.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So he says, yeah, the war started because people were forced to get the vaccine. And if you weren't, well, you know what happens. I don't remember what the exact quote is.
You
But
don't even need to watch it now because
I
this is
know.
pretty
We
good.
I
need
know.
the sequel
Thank
with you
you.
playing the
yes,
future traveler.
See, Aaron's watched it, so
Yeah.
that's a compliment.
I
but-
forced myself through this one. Yeah.
Yes. And so the COVID vaccine obviously gives you a microchip implant, which, again, we're seeing common themes of the conspiracy theories that happened during the
Yeah.
pandemic. And what confused me the most is that he was like, well, yeah, we can do an x-ray. You can see my microchip. Okay. So they show this.
What about the
X-ray.
radiation?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't he afraid of X-rays? That's great. Yeah.
Thank you. It's so incredibly frustrating. But anyway, so they show a x-ray where it's in his hand. Mm-hmm. How'd you get a microchip in your hand? Did you get vaccinated in your hand? What are we talking?
That's not
Like,
where
That's
you-
where they
that's
put
not
the
where
new
you're
shot in.
vaccinated.
yeah, it's
Well, I
right.
think
It's
it was
like
that-
right here.
I think it was that he had to get that because wasn't there something about like the underneathers and stuff? Like
Yes, the underneathers were the people that refused to get vaccinated.
right. So they were forced underground. But if you had the microchip, it was more like okay, you can live in society,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
But again, why is it in the hand?
Okay. So obviously this documentary was absolutely bogus.
Oh my gosh, horrible.
Oh, man. Hang on.
I'm just going to tell you right now, I made it through 22 minutes. I fast forwarded. I couldn't make it through. I had to turn it off. It was the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen.
So she missed
So
the
the-
part where it all gets revealed to be true.
The
then.
rest of the story is so yeah, underneath there's microchip in the hand, all this stuff. They do all this blood testing.
The blood testing.
And
I
so he's
can't.
got all these heavy metals in his blood and all this stuff that they don't even know what some of it is. Like
He
they
has
set
no
it off-
ancestry.
Yeah, he has no ancestry. His DNA is actually a little bit different than like what it should be. There's all this weird crap in his blood. Supposedly, yeah, there's the microchip. They go further down the road and somebody's following the guy making
Oh,
the
yes.
documentary.
Someone is following. Yes. That was before the second interview, even. He
Tries
was
to
like,
get-
someone's following me.
Yeah,
man."
tries to get a hold of this dude several times. Never can get a hold of him again. And then in the park that they met in originally, so this guy disappears, was the body was burned, but the left hand was missing.
Yeah, that's
with
right.
a microchip in it. Dun dun dun.
Like, it's so fake, and they don't advertise it as fake, which that's what I.
Well,
That's
you
where
can't
I was
advertise it as
like,
fake.
yeah, Blair Witch
Well-
Project.
Yeah. I mean, it
that's
was an
advertised as fake.
interesting
Mockumentaries.
story, but it was really bizarre.
Yeah, go watch Spinal Tap instead. Best in show.
So
That's
the
a
thing for
better
me is,
documentary.
I didn't make it as far as you did. My critical eye at the very beginning when they're showing all the newspaper, the websites and all
Yes.
that stuff. If you pause those, not a single one of those is an actual
Yeah.
website from an actual news organization.
Right.
They're all phony. So
And I actually went back and tried to find a story about dude stealing food because the reason he got in trouble was he took bananas and water or
he thought it
some
was
damn
free.
thing.
And he
Yeah.
didn't understand our customs here yet.
Right, because in the
I
future,
think it's ridiculous. You
So
pay
wait a second.
for bottled water.
He knew that the vaccine wars started with the COVID vaccine. He knew all that, but he didn't know that back here we have to pay for food.
Yeah.
right, exactly. But so he got in trouble because he took bananas and water, and in the future, food and water are free. So that was the whole derailment was banana again. The damn bananas.
Yeah, it's always
Yes,
the bananas.
it's always the
And the
bananas.
bananas are radioactive.
Next
Here's-
episode, bananas.
Here's my thoughts on that whole thing. Have you guys ever seen 12 Monkeys?
Yes, absolutely.
Sounds a lot like 12 Monkeys.
Yeah, kind of.
Sounds a lot like 12 Monkeys, doesn't it? People living in the future got to live underground because a disease came through and wiped everybody out. Okay, well, we're going to send this prisoner back in time to figure out how to stop this disease from spreading throughout the world and killing off the population. So they send this unwilling individual, i.e. Bruce Willis, back in time, but they don't understand what they're really doing when they send people back in time. The scientists don't really have it down as perfect science. So he shows up, he's treated as a crazy man. He doesn't remember if he's really from the future or if he is a little psychotic.
Right.
Like, are these hallucinations? Am I losing it? Because all of a sudden he'll disappear. I guess somehow he's on some sort of timer and can just, when they want him back, he can just go back without any machinery or anything. So I think somebody watched 12 Monkeys, read too many QAnon conspiracy theories.
I know. Exactly.
And made the
Instantly,
decision.
I was like,
Yeah.
stop it.
They were gonna
can't.
go ahead and try to feed into this whole thing, which is just, I don't know. If you advertise it and market it as a mockumentary, I'm all for it. Go for it.
Exactly.
That'd be fine.
Yes. But you're trying
to sit there,
to sell it as a real documentary, and like the people that aren't educated enough to like understand that this is
you're
fake.
gonna watch it and think it's real.
Yes,
Yeah.
and get information from it, you know? And like, again, that's not a knock on these people. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
If I was a little kid and I watched it, I'd probably think it was real.
Exactly.
Man, this man was
yes.
from the future. Yeah.
Like,
It was-
imagine a teacher showing this as a documentary in school.
Right. Oh, yeah.
How influential that would
stuff
be.
like that happens all the time.
Yeah,
But
that's why I have
it
such
was-
an issue with it not being marketed as fake.
Simply
Right.
entertaining.
it was an entertaining story. And again, I just love the storytelling of some of this and the tying to the heavy metals and the radiation, and there is no documentation of him. He doesn't exist because he hadn't been born yet. And I mean, it kind of checked all those like tropey things, that you should have in a time travel documentary. But it was absolutely bizarre. I went back and tried to find anything that I could.
I couldn't find anything on this man.
On
like
this guy,
it's just
or
not.
somebody that stole bananas and water.
Yeah.
And I couldn't come up with
Yeah.
anything. So that one I think is out
It's
there.
garbage.
Well, sorry
Just
I wasted
saying.
your time. I'm the one who assigned that to you. That's my bad.
Literally, I have never been so mad watching this.
Didn't mean to waste your time, dear. That was
Wait until you get the next assignment.
Bananas.
You're smarter for it now, knowing
I don't know.
what
I
to
think
look.
I lost an IQ point when I was,
maybe.
Yeah.
quite possibly.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you giving it the old college try. But
There's
yeah,
nothing college about that.
there is something to like I think I would have probably I didn't even bother watching it because I knew it was fake before I bothered looking into
So
it.
I had to watch it just because I'm like, okay, I got to see what this is all about.
The whole
because
idea, though, it wouldn't be some remote, strange documentarian who has no film credit to his name. And I don't know who made this thing. So he could have 50 film credits to his name. But the fact of the matter is, if anybody came out with a story that had any kind of evidence to it, this guy would be everywhere. This guy would be on talk shows. You know, this guy would be national, international, global news. Everyone would know about this guy. And, the government would snatch him up. And why wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. Well,
why
apparently they maybe did, or at least his hand.
Except, they got the hand.
Yeah, they got the really important part of him.
Well,
They got the chip.
you mean like in Terminator, where a
Yes.
future technology was brought back in time, and then you destroyed the vessel that carried that
Do
technology?
the impression. Do the impression.
But you managed to save one microchip.
I'm looking for John Connor.
It's ridiculous. Is time travel possible? Yes. You're going through it right now. And it's relative to you. It's your own personal experiences. Like so much in this world. There's all kinds of theories out there when it comes to, do we exist in a simulation? Do we exist in a real world? As far as I know, I'm a crazy man sitting in a padded room and none of you exist.
Right?
Because
Yeah,
all we can go on is the way that we see the world, the way that we perceive the information that's going into this spongy little mass between our ears. And that's the best you can do with it. Would I travel time if I had the ability? Yeah, I would. I would. But I don't think I would interrupt anything if I could stop myself.
But would you being there be the interruption?
what I'm
That's
saying.
the thing, though, because, you can't not interact with anything.
And we've got particle tests that show that.
Right.
Well, and here's the thing, though. Like, you being there would be the interruption because the amount of matter and energy in the universe doesn't change. But as soon as you go back in time and there's two of you, now you've changed the amount of matter and energy in the universe.
That is super interesting, what you just said, because it's so true. There's this entire universe, no matter how expansive and large and big it is, has a finite set of mass and energy. It is neither created nor destroyed. And if you traveled through time, you would be interrupting that. Yet another rule of the universe broken by time travel. And so, does the universe fix itself? Maybe. We would never know. Does it correct paradoxes? We would never know. Our perception of the world would continue. Our perception of history would never actually change because the history I was taught, even if it was changed before I was taught it, is still what I'm taught.
Right.
I hope I got that right.
Yeah.
A, B, C, D.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
associated.
I think it does because if it doesn't, then there's no free will. Because that's the only other explanation.
Well, and-
Either there's no free will or the universe fixes itself.
Right. And time travel, time travel is relative, right? You cross the international date line, you're in yesterday.
Well, we traveled back in time last weekend.
We
whole
did.
hour we
yeah,
got.
exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
But when we went to Thailand, it was the same day that we left, even though it was a day later.
And yet, the people on the ground age slower than you did.
That's
in
right,
that
they
planet.
did. By
Right?
a few microseconds.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it is relative. If you guys go to visit Minnesota and you drive, and I'm like, nuts to that, I'm flying. I'm there a day before you, or 14 hours at least, probably before you. Did I time travel? We both end up in the same place, but it took you guys 14 hours longer to get there.
And technically, I'm older
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
because time travel.
You were traveling slower. You were traveling through
Yes,
space
exactly.
slower, which means you were traveling through time.
My head hurts.
So, but that's the thing. So is time travel
got a movie
possible?
for you to watch.
Yeah, we do it every day.
We do it all the time.
I'm never taking movie suggestions again. Just saying.
See, you did learn something from this whole thing.
Yeah, she learned that if I tell her to watch a documentary, she's going to throw it out the window.
It's true.
Why don't you watch it and tell me what you thought?
Yeah, there we go. I'll watch it if you tell me it's actually good.
No.
You know, if you actually watch
that's
it
true.
and tell me it's good, I will watch it.
I was going off of Aaron's suggestion,
Yeah,
so we're
Aaron.
Well, I didn't say it was good. I just said it was kind of interesting.
all right. On that, let's go. Last word, Steve.
Well, I think the past exists in our memories and in the photographs and stuff, the recordings. I think that's the only place it exists. So it's not worth spending too much time dwelling on it. Look to the future instead.
I like it. You've been listening to Jackalopes Explore.